Hi, folks. I'm Bob Hales, and welcome to the Tinfoil Hat Club. Hey folks, welcome to the Tinfoil Hat Club, your weekly political internet show. It's regularly simulcast on Tuesdays on commonsenseconversation.com blog at commonsenseconversation.com and on the Cantankerous Old Coots blog at cantankerousoldcoots.com. And it can be found other times as situation warrants, or more likely if I feel like doing an extra show or two during the week. It can also be found on the YouTube channel, The Coffee Club. I'm Bob Hales, and I'm your host here on the Tinfoil Hat Club. And my goals when doing this show are, 1, to highlight government waste, government corruption, and government officials, politicians, bureaucrats, and such that ignore the Constitution. And maybe do things that are perfectly legal, but are a little bit short when it comes to ethics and morals, or maybe just plain wrong. Second thing I want to do here is piss you off at those things that I highlight. I want to make you mad enough so that when the show's over, you just cannot wait to do something besides just bitch and complain. Speaking of just bitching and complaining, I'm going to follow my daddy's advice. He said that if all a person ever did was bitch and complain without offering any solutions, hell, you're part of the problem, not part of the solution. So I'm going to try not to be part of the problem. I'm going to do what a lot of other blowhard commentators and pundits don't do. I'm going to offer specific common sense solutions that make sense to me about the specific issues I talk about. And if it makes sense to you as well, if I succeed in pissing you off, go do something. I'll give you some things you can do. One thing I always suggest is going to commonsenseconversation.com. Look over there in the right-hand sidebar and use that little widget that says, Find Your Congress Critter. You put in your address and click submit. No, your address isn't going to be saved. This isn't a way to get you on a list where you can get lots of crap mail. It will spit back your representative and your senators' names, street addresses, email addresses, phone numbers for your district offices in state and in Washington. Call them up. Email them. If you call them, ask them, when's Senator so-and-so going to be back in the district? You know, even if you have no intentions of showing up, just when they think somebody might come confront them on something, it tends to straighten their act up a little bit. They don't like being called out in public. So the next thing you can do after you've used that little contact your Congress Critter widget, made your calls, sent your mail, sent your email, is to do what a lot of people would consider unethical. I don't call it unethical. I call it playing their game, using their rules, and turning it to my advantage. Lie to them. Hell, they lie to you. They lie to you often, so lie back. If you see something anytime, anywhere where you feel like a federal official is doing something wrong and wasting your tax money, but he's in Oregon and you live in Florida, call his Washington office. Complain. And tell him you live in his district and you're going to vote. Now, something you need to understand, I am not politically correct. A person who tells a lie is not misinformed. They're not avoiding certain facts, like a lot of politicians and commentators will say. They're just plain damn liars, and that's what they're going to be called here on the Tinfoil Hat Club. Another thing I hate is, with all due respect, bullshit. I'm not going to pretend to respect somebody a government bureaucrat, politician, any elected officials, or anybody else for that matter, who proactively does things that I think are damaging to the best country on the face of the earth, or what was the best country on the face of the earth, the most powerful country on the face of the earth, the freest country on the face of the earth. We've gotten away from that, but we can be that way again if we'll just wake up. If I think someone, by their actions, not their party affiliation — I don't pick on Republicans over Democrats or Democrats over Republicans — and not by their words, because politicians are lying SOBs and they'll say anything. But if I think that somebody, by their actions, is a communist and working to ignore the Constitution, I'll call them a damn communist and say they're ignoring the Constitution. I'm not going to argue against their actions with some sweet little line like, with all due respect, you must consider this or that. Bullshit. I was born without a politically correct bone in my body, and in the last 57 years, nobody's bothered to install one. So let's see if I can piss y'all off enough to get you to take some action. The EPA is probably, with the exception of the IRS, and I'm going to say soon to be the exception of Homeland Security, the EPA does more to damage people's rights in this country than any other government agency. They just keep adding on regulation after regulation after regulation. It's like they think their job is to regulate more and more and more, rather than Environmental Protection Agency. If they did the mandate that their name says, it would be protect the environment. Did you know that the EPA adds something like 80,000 pages of regulations every year? Did you know that their regulations cost more than 5% of the United States gross domestic product? Complying with the Environmental Protection Agency is the equivalent of the cost of the Defense Department and Homeland Security combined. Let me tell you a couple stories about the EPA and what they do. Now, that's been several years ago, but up in Alaska, the fisheries people that had salmon processing plants and all that, it might have been out of the goodness of their heart, and it might have been they saw the writing on the wall, but for whatever reason, they started cleaning their stuff up. Used to be when you process fish, there was a bunch of garbage went out, and it was just going right straight out of pipe and back to the ocean. And for whatever reason, it doesn't matter what the reason is, they decided to clean it up. So they put water scrubbers and filters and all kind of stuff on their equipment, and they got their water clean. They got it really, really clean. And then along came the EPA and made the water dirty. Oh, yeah. See, the EPA didn't say you have to meet a certain standard. The EPA didn't say you can only have 5 parts per million or 10 parts per 100,000 or anything like that. They didn't say anything about standards to be met. What the EPA said was that all industry is dirty, and you have 3 years to make your discharge 25% cleaner. Didn't matter that the discharge was already clean. They had to make it cleaner, and it couldn't be done. They had already used all the technology possible. They had it as clean as it could get. So what did they do? Well, before the EPA could come around to test their water to see what the baseline was, they added crap back to it. They turned off all that high-dollar equipment they had. They made their water dirty again. The EPA comes around and tests their water and says, okay, here's what you got. 25% cleaner, here's what you've got to have. They just turn the equipment back on. That's how stupid the EPA is. They didn't look at what they were producing and say, hey, you're doing a pretty good job. We'll go on down the road, look at the next fish processing plant. No, whatever you were doing, if you had been producing zero pollution, absolutely none, you would have had to get 25% better. That's real smart, isn't it? The EPA doesn't just screw with big companies like that. Let me tell you a couple stories about individuals. Not big companies, just individuals. In Pennsylvania, there's a fella named John. I'm going to screw this up, and John, if you listen to this, I'm sorry, but his name is John Pozaska. I'll spell it. Pozsgai. He's an immigrant from Hungary, and he was a mechanic. And he kept shoehorning money away, and he put enough money away to purchase the land around his home in Morrisville, Pennsylvania. The land that he bought was an old junkyard. Now, if you're familiar with what the EPA does at all, you can see where this one's going. He bought a junkyard, and since he took pride in his home, he wanted the new land around his home to look good, so he started cleaning it up, removing 7,000 old tires and a bunch of rusted out automobiles. EPA didn't see that as a cleanup act. No, it was a violation of the Clean Water Act. His property was declared a wetland. Now, I don't know if you've ever looked into wetland rules, but what the EPA calls a wetland and what people that have common sense would call a wetland is a dramatically different definition. By the EPA standards, if you have if any part of your property, you got 10 acres, and any part of that 10 acres has water standing on it for more than 72 hours in a year, it's a wetland. So anyway, they called his land a wetland. And, oh, by the way, in his particular case, the wetland, it had a drainage ditch along the edge of the property. That made it a wetland. Now, they told him he didn't need a permit to dump topsoil on this isolated piece of land he's got. So he did. Oh, but before he did, the Army Corps of Engineers said that he had to apply for a permit to dump the topsoil. So it's okay to dump it, apply for a permit, and the Army Corps of Engineers, after getting some money, gave him his permit. And what happened then? Here comes the EPA. They set up surveillance cameras to capture him filling his land with topsoil, as he had been told he could by the Corps of Engineers, as he had paid for a permit, an approved permit from the Corps of Engineers. The EPA then arrested him for discharging pollutants into the waters of the United States. This man left Hungary to come to a free country. Boy, I'll bet he is surprised. The pollutants consisted of earth, topsoil, and sand. The EPA openly admits that no hazardous waste. The EPA openly admits that no hazardous waste were involved in the case. Yet he was found guilty and sentenced to 3 years in prison and a $202,000 fine. He spent 1.5 years in prison, 1.5 years in a halfway house, and was under supervised probation for 5 years. Needless to say, he went bankrupt. Couldn't even pay his property taxes because of those bastards. Some other folks, and you might have seen these people on the news recently. Mr. and Mrs. Michael Sackett from Priest Lake, Idaho. They wanted to build a house on a half-acre land. After construction had broken ground, after they got a construction permit from the local authorities, after they had done everything just like they were supposed to, the EPA came in and said that the family had violated the Clean Water Act by placing fill materials, let's all say it together now, in a wetland. The property was designated as a wetland, yet the neighbors on both sides have built houses on their lots, and there were already established sewer lines in the neighborhood. But their property that the county gave them a building permit for was a wetland. There's not a lake, there's not a stream, but the EPA is requiring them to obtain a building permit that would cost more than the value of their land. They filed suit against the EPA, and it was dismissed by a federal judge, but they appealed it. Now, here's how smart our government is, even when the government's trying to do right. Here's the reason that when the person from the government says, I'm from the government, I'm here to help, that's why you want to run like hell, what I'm fixing to tell you. This past month, the Supreme Court ruled 9-0 in the Sackett's favor, but left the regulations that harassed them in place. You think there's some intelligent people on the Supreme Court? I don't. Now, like I said, I try to propose a solution. And I try not to get into party politics, and I'm not getting party here. But one of the few libertarian-minded individuals in Congress, one of the few people who actually knows there is a Constitution and would like to see the federal government brought under the control of the Constitution like it's supposed to be, is Senator Rand Paul from Kentucky. And he has introduced a petition and a bill to Congress to rein in the EPA. And below this video, I'm going to put a link to where you can go sign the petition. Yes, it asks for a donation as well for Rand PAC. Give them money if you want to. Don't give them money if you want to. I don't. I figure I do my bit by bitching and raising hell and bringing people out there into awareness about what the government does. So, no, I don't donate any money. And if you don't want to, that's fine. Sign the damn petition. Get it in front of Congress. Get all the Congress people on board that they better, by God, start reining in the EPA, or they might find themselves looking for a job. I think one of the best things that could happen would be for a whole lot of pencil and paper get used in Washington in the next few years. For what? I think they need to use a lot of pencils and paper writing up resumes. But anyway, look down below the video and you'll find a link to go sign the petition. So, and I really, really think that would be a good idea. Now that's about it for today. Don't forget, use that little widget over there in the sidebar. Get your senator and your representative, your senators, both of them, and your representatives, name, address, phone number, email address. Get in contact with them. Tell them you're tired. Be like Howard Beale in Network. I'm tired as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore. So get hold of them. Let them know that they better get their shit straight or start looking for a job, that you'll be glad to fire them next election. If they show up in your district where you can get to them personally, where you can get right in front of them, you go up, you talk to them about whatever you want to talk to them about. Don't be threatening. Intense is just fine. You can bet your ass I'm intense. When you go to walk away, make sure you shake their hand and don't let it go until you make sure you got their attention. You look them right straight in the eye and you make damn sure the last thing you tell them before you walk off, we don't work for you. You work for us. So until next week, I want y'all to have a good time. Or until the next show. It might be next week. It might be tomorrow. You never can tell what I'm going to do. But until then, y'all have a good day, evening, week. And until you come back, make sure you stay aware of what's going on. Stay on your elected officials' ass. That's all they understand. And remember, the single most important thing about all this. Y'all come back now. You hear?